Hello and welcome back to Million Dollar Media. I'm your host, Joelle Rapp. Today we'll be doing a review for Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim, and today I have with me...
James.
Kirstie.
Kirstie is my unofficial Lord of the Rings expert, but no pressure if she gets anything wrong. I'm sure you'll tell us in the comments. Anyways, let's get into it. So, personally, I appreciated what they were trying to do with this movie. And I appreciated the vibes. Loved the fact that they were like, oh yeah, let's make a Lord of the Rings movie where the two women characters actually talk to each other about things that are relevant to the plot. But I do think that they took too much from the Two Towers to make it stand out. It felt too much like recycling to me.
I'll be completely honest, that's probably my biggest gripe with this movie. Like, I've got some other things, but those are really minor. My biggest thing, and I don't know much about War over here on the book or really the story, but it is like 1-to-1 with the Battle of Helm's Deep. Like, sending the riders of Rohan away because it's like, oh yeah, you're bad, and then they come back and save them. At the end of the movie, the riders of Rohan literally come down the same mountain in the same way to save them at the same point in time when they're about to die. Like, it was a 1-to-1. I think the one thing that I really loved though that wasn't in the Two Towers is like the king. What's his name?
Helm Hammerhand.
Helm Hammerhand going out there as this like legendary ghosty ghoul guy. Just popping heads one by one. But yeah, in my opinion, it was recycling. It was the exact same movie. It didn't feel like they really took much liberties. They just kind of realized, oh, everyone loves the War of Helm's Deep. Let's just do that again.
I can see I'm going to be the odd man out here with this one. I really liked it. And I actually really liked a lot of the stuff, the reasons that you did not like it. Getting into some of the, quote, recycled material, a lot of the elements, to be fair, it's been a minute since I've read the appendices, where the story with Helm Hammerhand is, but I want to say at least 85% is completely accurate lore. So I really, really appreciated all of that about it.
That's fair.
Yeah. No, I was definitely going to ask about that, actually. So, is this actually a story that we hear about in the appendices?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
This exactly, not quite. As I said, 85%-ish. They did then add some stuff. And so it's not... What they have is all fairly accurate, and then they added stuff to help flesh out what we don't have, which is the entirety of a complete story that this is, because this wasn't just an appendices story. So elements of, like, you mentioned the two female characters talking, that's not in the appendices.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so they did add more things that then they worked with a bunch of different people, including a lot of people who are on the creative team for Lord of the Rings, to make sure that it was in line with Tolkien's style of writing and storytelling.
Okay.
For those in the audience who don't know what the appendices are, could you explain?
Yes. So the appendices is a very large section at the end of Lord of the Rings where Tolkien initially started info dumping a lot of his lore and history and side stories from when he was working on the world of Middle-earth as a whole.
Which I think that more authors should do that, personally. But I understand that not everyone has time for that. Brandon Sanderson, if you're listening, you have no excuse. So, how did you feel about a kind of perspective shift to a female protagonist, and B, kind of staying with that protagonist throughout the entirety of the film? Something that Lord of the Rings does is bounce around between the different sections of the Fellowship as they are going about their own journeys. So I think that was a major difference in the storytelling and directing of this film.
I enjoyed it a lot. I think while we have a main female protagonist, there are multiple times where we'll see Helm, for example, like kind of running around and doing his own thing without Hera being around. And so not to the same degree that we see in Lord of the Rings, but you do have a little bit more of that bouncing around than with just like a first-person point of view main female protagonist, I think.
And that's a fair point, because there are a few points where we see it from Wolf's perspective, just to give like little snippets here and there of him interacting with his men. And I think that that is definitely something that helped flesh him out more as a character and an antagonist in this film. I don't think that there was enough that we see between them to justify his reaction that kind of gets this entire film going.
I would have enjoyed an extra half an hour of some context plot. That would have been nice. I'm also fairly completionist, though, so having more lore and more story is always good. And I know not everyone wants to sit in the theater for 3 or 4 hours.
Fair enough. Gonna be honest with you listeners, all of us are people who tend to watch the extended editions of Lord of the Rings on a annual, if not biannual basis. So we are the people who will stick around in the theater for 2.5, 3.5 hours watching these films. Something that I kind of struggled with a couple times throughout this film was the animation style sometimes.
Yes.
So I love a good anime, and I love what the director Kenji Kamiyama did with this and interpreting it into Lord of the Rings. Like we see the village where Helm has everyone meet.
Edoras.
Edoras, thank you. I loved how exact they made those shots to look like they do in the Lord of the Rings movies.
And those shots in Lord of the Rings movies are a one-to-one recreation of how the scenes and buildings are described in the books.
Excellent, excellent. I love all of this. They had some parts that were really faithful to it, and then other parts that kind of made me kind of question what they were doing with this adaptation. For example, Hera's outfit for most of the film looks so much more anime than it does like medieval clothing like we see Éowyn wearing in the Two Towers and such. And the armor that she wears does not look at all like the typical armor of Rohan, doesn't look like anything we see in Battle of Helm's Deep, anything like that. So any kind of comments that you have on that, Kirstie? You made some excited faces.
I did. So the armor is different. I did not look a ton at her armor. The first thing I thought that was weird was her boots. I ended up having to research her boots. Her boots are actually almost 100% accurate for Western style horse dressage. Is that the word?
Yes.
Equestrian dressage?
Maybe that's it.
Yeah, probably.
Probably. So I didn't look as much into some of the other armor that she ends up wearing because my first stop was the boots, and then I went into a whole rabbit hole on that one. Her outfits do stand out a little bit more anime-esque. Aside from that, though, that could definitely be influence from just the creative direction the story took. There's a time difference, but we're definitely seeing a different style from her than what we've seen from the people of Rohan before.
Yeah, like, she stands out against everyone else because A, she wears white so much when we don't see much of those colors in traditional dyes, from my understanding. And, like, even her handmaiden, her outfits are so different from Olwen. And Olwen is also, like, a warrior and is a part of kind of the royal household of Rohan. I just did not see enough justification for that to not take me out of the story. And I think that was really the thing that got me.
Mm-hmm. I think to go back, you said that she wears a lot of white. In my head, that is a callback to Éowyn in Lord of the Rings, where Éowyn also wears quite a lot of white. And been a minute since I've deep dived a number of lore pieces, but at least as a headcanon, it was a position of Rohan nobility, female, to wear white.
Okay. Because there is that scene that we get where we see Éowyn walking around in the white dress. thinking theatrical version,
Yes.
not extended. I could see basis for that. Okay.
In the extended, if I remember correctly, that's, aside from her armor, that's Eowyn's main dress.
And I always remember, like, the brown or green dress that she wears in the stable and in the feasting hall when she, like, hands him the
mug.
the mug. So that is my whole thing. Anyways, James, thoughts?
I was trying to think if I've ever seen a woman in any of the Lord of the Rings movies wear pants.
Eowyn in the battle against the Witch King was wearing pants.
Besides when she was in the war dressed as a man so that she could get through. I guess that's the one exception.
I agree.
And I guess that was one of the things that kind of took me out of it. It was just kind of bizarre for that world, if that makes sense.
Yes, I would agree. 100%. Yeah. Like, I understand kind of taking a cue from people who actually ride horses all the time. But if the other women who ride horses are not wearing pants, it sticks out and it doesn't make any sense. So,
I think one of the things to consider with that is that Rohan's people and their entire society was based pretty heavily off of Viking society within our cultures. And that you would have, that pants was a very normal thing for women to be wearing when they were shield maidens. And that in this movie, Hera is attempting to reignite the shield maiden faction within her culture.
That's a good perspective.
Yes. Okay.
Like, it's weird.
Yeah.
Because nobody else is currently doing it, including her handmaiden,
Yeah.
who is very obviously by the end of the film shown to have been a shield maiden, at least in my understanding of the storytelling.
Yes.
That's what I.
But you can make an argument towards trying to call out to traditional wear.
Oh yeah. The original thing that I was going to say about animation was the wide shots that are very like. They're like a point where you can make this world feel so expansive and almost awe-inspiring. Like, yes, this is an entire world that they live in. Not a ton of people have probably had this experience, but like standing out in the middle of a field in Montana is kind of the vibe that I was getting. Like, just open space and mountains and just sky everywhere. But the way that they did the transition from like that trying to get the 3D feeling down to the 2D feeling that you get on ground level with these characters did not work for me.
No, that pulled me out. The difference in animation styles. I feel like they should have just stuck with one and kept it through the whole.
I would agree.
I got two comments on that. One is that like it kind of frustrates me because at the very, very start of the movie, they have a beautiful like over the head shot of like the mountains and the valley and all of that, and it's gorgeous. And so you can see that like they could do a wide shot. They're capable. But then for the rest of the movie, when you get a wide shot, the grass and the plains look so flat. It looks like a video game map. Like if you're placed into, you can pick out a map in Halo and you're dropped in, and then you can't. There's a border right to this map, and it's like in a video game that doesn't matter. You know where the border is, doesn't matter. But in this, it's like it felt like there was a map and they were dropped into it. And I don't know how to explain it any other way than that. The second thing is that there were points in time, like when she went onto the rock to give the meat to the eagles, that it looked like she was placed on top of the rock. And you could and the shadow didn't really line up, and her feet didn't really line up with the rock. And it was real bad on that shot. And some other ones, kind of to echo what you two are saying, but to give like an actual concrete example of that.
Yeah. I didn't notice the feet and the shadow not really lining up and making sense in that shot, but I did think that it was very odd and out of character that she's just out here with this tiny little piece of meat trying to feed this gigantic eagle that is known to snatch people, or at least according to stories that they were sharing around, and how it was considered super dangerous to do that.
I thought it was funny when she, because I didn't see, the bag wasn't really that big, and so when she whipped out that giant piece of meat. I was like, that's hilarious.
Very cartoon.
Yes. Very anime.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whoopsh.
Okay. So moving on towards music. The music was okay. The original bits, I think, just weren't enough to really sell it to me. And it felt like they had a lot of recycled themes that they played.
I enjoyed a lot of the motifs being similar, being that this was not a movie that's supposed to stand on its own. It's supposed to be expansive to what is already existing. There was a lot of repetition within the motifs they used, and I feel like Gallagher, the composer, needed just a little bit more room to play with the stuff he was adding onto a lot of the original motifs.
Mm-hmm. I wish that they had given the composer more leeway in that to write something that fits the world but also gives Hera something to go off of. It's fine for me to have that be like the theme of Helm Hammerhand. That's fine, okay? The writers of Rohan, great. Love those themes. Those motifs are classic and they give you a very clear kind of mental image, but yeah, I wish that there had been more original themes in the score.
It would have been nice to have a theme for Wolf and a theme for Hera.
That would have been cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have actually added a lot to the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. It felt like there were some holes whenever Wolf was on screen in the soundtrack.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it.
I wonder if that was intentional. I'm not sure. I haven't dissected the soundtrack yet.
That's fair.
But
That's fair. This is mostly just going off of what I noticed. It just felt like there was too much missing.
I would agree that the handmaiden should have been singing during that scene. Or just another woman within the court would be good. I don't think they used the same audio from Lord of the Rings, though. The voice was older. And so even if it was Miranda Otto again, it was not a young Miranda Otto.
Because she's credited in the cast.
She is. She is the narrator.
Okay.
She is the narrator, and so my headcanon is that she's telling the story because Rohan is a oral tradition people, that she's telling the story to her children.
That would make a lot of sense. I would
cool.
like that. Yeah, I like that, especially since it's like kind of cartoony.
Mm-hmm.
At points, it makes sense if it was like a story being told to children of Rohan.
Mm-hmm. And looking at Eowyn's story and her massive character growth throughout the Lord of the Rings in general, where she would be discussing with her children the merits of shield maidens, but that the way she learned in Lord of the Rings, that war is not, death itself through war is not the be-all end-all of glory.
I think that does make me like the movie a little bit more.
It does make me like the movie a little bit more, but it does make me a little bit more confused about Hera's character. Simply because of her scene on the bridge where she's wearing a wedding dress and essentially claims to be the bride of death. That is the high point of her character, essentially, aside from actually, like, killing Wolf. So...
Well, but I want to challenge that just a little bit, because she doesn't kill Wolf. She tries as hard as she possibly can not to kill him.
Yes. I don't think that absolves her from the fact that he dies.
I disagree, I think. At a certain point, it became necessary.
For him to die?
Yeah.
Well, yes, I agree with that.
And so, I think, yeah.
But just because something's necessary doesn't mean that you are absolved of what you did.
That's true.
Anyways, this is Moral Hour on $1 Million Media. Anyways.
I think a better line would have been if she said that she was the bride of Rohan and her people were her essence.
I agree.
However, deciding that she is the bride of death would be considered a very traditional stance for any warrior of Rohan to take, bride or husband.
Yeah.
And the up through Lord of the Rings for Rohan's history for hundreds of years, their war cry has been Forth Eralingus, which is their people, and then death. So it is consistent with her people's customs at the very least.
Okay. I don't know. I think I would have to think about whether or not that makes it better.
That's fair.
Don't get me wrong. Super metal moment. Love this for her. Girl boss. I don't know. It just felt kind of hollow to me. Because this was basically just horse girl versus incel in the end. Dude literally could have found someone else to marry him. This was all just pride.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm not gonna lie, that was one of my frustrations with Wolf. I really did not like him as a protagonist. He didn't feel real. He just felt like, yes, this male got cut by a female when he was younger. Yes, this male was rejected by a woman. Yes, he is mad. And that's like his entire thing. Oh, his dad got punched by her dad. Her
And then
dad
he
was stronger.
died.
And then he died.
That was the what? It was so funny.
That was
Listen,
so good.
Consistent with Helm.
I did not expect the dude to die right off the bat.
Neither did I.
I thought, okay, so we're gonna see this dude get bested. He's gonna storm off in a huff with his son. He's gonna die while they're away, and then the son's gonna come back. No, dude just straight up died.
Hammerhand was a descriptive title.
Indeed.
I will actually disagree with you, James. I kind of liked that he felt so
Fake.
fakeish in that regard because he feels more real. So he feels more fake for a Lord of the Rings character, but kind of more real for like us. And I loved the fact that one of their elements that they put in is that Wolf like was not really under the influence of the ring or any other powers. He was literally just a man, and that it shows that the ring is not the portrayer of all evil. There is evil within humankind.
I like that.
I can appreciate that aspect of it a lot. I really can. I just don't like how simplistic his villain story is. I really wish it was like, I mean, to go to the extent that he did, to go to his death like he did, to do everything that he did because
A girl didn't want to marry him?
yeah. It's like, sure, you can find specific examples of that in history. In general, that's not how human beings are. And so I just wish there was more to his story than also the whole disagreement, like the whole reason why he was mad at her and he left and stuff was he got cut by her when they were kids. Like, no, dude, nobody, no kid gets cut like that, and then their whole friendship breaks apart.
If there was already rivalry between the parents, I could see that being a reason why.
So I'm hearing we need a director's cut with an extra half an hour to an hour of scenes and context.
Correct.
And character building.
Yes.
Yes.
I want to see more interactions between Helm and the people of his court prior to the opening scene. So, personally, I think that what bothered me about Wolf is that we see him be smart, we see him be manipulative, we see him be ruthless, but we still see him driven almost completely by this irrational drive for first destruction of Helm Hammerhead's family, which is fine, makes sense. Then destruction, essentially, of Rohan, which makes less sense because he said that he wanted to rule it, and then we see it get even flatter at the end, and it just comes down to because she didn't want him, that's what he reduces himself to. That is his main driving force. Even as his men are dying, even when it drives him to have to kind of kill his advisor in order to keep going.
I think one of Tolkien's overarching themes through all of his writing is that even if good does not have the power to prevail over evil, evil will always be self-defeating. And so going back to the idea of that evil just pervades within man, regardless of maybe direct influence by a power like the ring, one of the elements is that because he spirals, even if the spiral is just because of a woman, which is also lore accurate in the appendices, he makes worse and worse decisions, and it becomes the worst person available to rule Rohan, as he said he wanted to, because he ends up destroying it. And a lot of people see that, and then he kills his advisor, and because people keep turning on him. That he in and of himself becomes, even though he doesn't kill himself, Hera still kills him ultimately, and so there's an element of that defeat. He himself has been self-defeating since the beginning.
I don't know if I agree that he has been self-defeating since the beginning, but I would agree that he had the potential to be. Simply because they kind of like put themselves in that situation to get hurt.
Beginning as in when he decided he was going to... Sorry.
Got it.
Beginning of when he decided he was going to take over and he wanted nothing to do with Hera.
Oh,
Not
okay.
from childhood, sorry.
Gotcha.
I didn't
Gotcha.
specify which beginning.
So, like, from the scene when she rejects him post-kidnapping?
Yeah, during the kidnapping. Actually, what I'm remembering for the scene is where she's like, if I marry you, and then he takes that as a rejection, where she's trying to smooth things over.
Yeah, that was so dumb.
That was really dumb.
Like,
But yeah, from that
I can't
moment...
see people doing that.
Mm-hmm. From about that moment, I would say I see him being a self-defeating spiral down.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there.
I think that moment really showed how volatile he was.
Yes.
Even if he was smart, even if he was ruthless, even if he can make decisions that further what he wants to happen, he's still unstable.
Yes.
And that is always going to knock him kind of off of whatever tower he builds himself.
Mm-hmm.
Like that siege tower.
I felt so bad for that one dude who was just banging the drums on top of the siege tower, who like 100% died.
100%.
100%. No way.
He was just vibing, and they were like, "Yeah, no, we don't care."
I like to imagine they drew lots for that job, and he tried to ask for a recount, and they told him no.
I like to imagine that he applied for that job.
He's like, "Yeah, they'll build in some like way for me to not die."
Yeah, it'll be great.
Yeah,
No.
follow the siege tower line is never a pretty picture.
No. It's real cool though, because I hadn't seen a siege tower like that before, and so like I was like, okay, how exactly does a siege tower work? And so like seeing it come to fruition, like fall like that and everything, that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I loved what they did with the Oliphants in this film. I loved seeing the rabid Oliphant just out there in the wilderness, and she has to go out there and try and like stop it.
Yeah,
That
was
and then
cool.
How they were weaponized, and oh yeah, if you don't have an elf just kind of casually climbing up its leg, they're actually really scary and difficult to defeat because they're just massive.
Mm-hmm. I enjoyed that too, and for a slightly different reason. In the appendices, there are that people group whose name I can't remember. They don't have a lot of Oliphants. It's noted that there are very, very few. And so the fact that there were 3 shown kind of alludes to the fact that potentially they were already having conversations with Mordor, and that a lot of that corruption stemmed way further past than what is inherently obvious in Lord of the Rings. And so you can see the story that we understand and know from Lord of the Rings slowly unfolding within the background of this story. A lot of initial moves and counter moves being made because they weren't supposed to have 3 Oliphants.
It also sort of explains the cultural fear that we see on people's faces in that battle, Pelennor Fields, when we just get essentially a stare down of them being charged by the Oliphant.
And there's a ton of them.
There's a ton of them, and these are the things that they heard stories about.
Yes.
That definitely adds a layer to the terror, to watch this thing from legend come charging at you, and you're supposed to cut it down with this teensy tiny sword or spear in your hand.
Yeah, and you're just on a horse, and your king is telling you to turn around and reform the line, and nobody wants to move forward.
Yeah. So I think that's about all the thoughts that I really had. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to add?
There was, and then I totally forgot what it was. That was what I wanted. War of Rohirrim took place like 500 years.
No.
Before.
Close. I can't quite do 100% accurate math off the top of my head because that is not my forte, but you're looking at just a little over 200 years, 230-something, 240-something.
Oh, okay.
Before The Hobbit.
Which makes sense.
Hobbit, okay.
And I was also curious about that because we do see, like, Saruman in this film just kind of show up for a quick second. And
Loved that cameo.
Christopher Lee, spot on, always.
Which also actually, now that you bring it up, makes a lot of sense because we see Isengard being occupied in War of the Rohirrim. And that's because Saruman has not yet moved in and rebuilt the walls and actually taken possession as a wizard. And so we see that, again, that background of the actual main story going on, those moves and counter moves starting to flesh out with Saruman showing up at the end.
And from that, we kind of also get the impression of Isengard as this center for evil within striking distance of Rohan. This was historically a place of threat.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. So I think, on the whole, as critical as I am of it, I had a good time watching this movie. I would still recommend people to go and see it. Decide for yourselves if it's trash, if you hate my guts, I don't care. But it was a fun watch.
I think it's worth the watch. I don't think it's worth going to the theater for. If it was better animated, I would say go to the theater for it. But I think it's still worth the watch.
Yeah, regardless of any comments I made, I was very happy with the film overall, and it's definitely one that I want to have on my shelves next to the rest of my Tolkien.
Fair enough.
Well, awesome. Thanks for joining us if you listened this long. We did not intend it to go this long. It was supposed to be a shorter episode, but that's just fine. Thanks for sticking around. Please like, share, and subscribe. I hope you all have a great day.